All right. I think if everybody is good, I think we've got some echo here. If everyone could mute who is not speaking, that'd be awesome. But wanted to kick this off. Really appreciate everybody being accommodating and jumping on to hear our updates to the Godman Guild site. We know it's seen some different variations, and Wineland Park's been through some changing of the staff here with Matt Adair leaving, so the housing committees haven't been as consistently meeting. So we really appreciate the accommodations and flexibility here to allow us to share what we've got. From that point, kick it off. We had started this track here in end of September to share what we had proposed for the Godman Guild site, and that consisted of two buildings on the south and the north, one larger E-shaped building on the south, and then a row of townhomes on and multifamily above on the northern portion as well, zero clearance. That plan did not save any of the trees and had two structures, one at 69 feet tall, and then the other building at 58 feet tall. We had about 10-foot setbacks there. All the parking was still being housed within the main building on the southern portion of the site, adjacent to the alley. And then traffic was coming through there as well. There was 5,800 square feet of ground floor commercial space spread amongst those two different buildings, a total of 344 units and 340 parking spaces to come up with that plan. The initial feedback, although majority of it was well received, there was still some pushback to get some more setbacks within the perimeter of the site, as well as a desire to save the trees. There wasn't much push on the density. Parking was in line. Commercial space was questionable. So then we followed up, and everybody was really accommodating again to allow us to get in there for October. And at that meeting, we added some setbacks. We changed the way that those patio fronts interacted to come up with more of a raised townhome instead of at grade. We weren't able to accommodate any saving of the trees at that point, and I know that was a big push for the neighborhood, but that plan consisted of two buildings. We increased those setbacks to 20 feet around the perimeter. Again, didn't save any of those trees. We dropped the northern portion another setback as well and added a floor to the southern portion. Again, at the conversations with the community who was looking for some added density or found it more acceptable on the southern portion. So that building stood at 82 feet and then 37 feet on the northern portion. Again, commercial presence of 5,800 square feet, a little over. Same unit count, just a little bit increased, 349, and then 336 parking spaces with an FAR of 4.49. We then took that plan to UAC, and that is where we really got the push from the community to save the trees as much as possible. It was no easy task. It's a lot of work. We tried to come up with some other solutions that would accommodate for saving the trees, or we thought could be amenable to get everybody on board for that plan. Unfortunately, that didn't work, and we had to revisit what we had come up for the plan. So we scrapped everything that we had done and started from scratch and really worked on a tight timeline, but I think it turned out to be a better product, and we're really stoked to share it with you, and hope that everybody else sees what we see as well. We definitely want to see something come into Wineland Park and help the guild and reactivate this site for something that can be beneficial for everyone to interact with and clean up how the streets feel from a safety perspective as well as lighting. So what we've got here, if I can share my screen. Can everybody see what we've got here? Got it. Perfect. Thank you, Michael. So what we've got now is one structure. The total building height now is 60 feet. So the shortest iteration so far, it's 5 stories. FAR of 3.57 with 3,400 square feet of commercial presence. So we've minimized the commercial footprint. It's now 281 units and 273 parking spaces, saving all 3 trees to the north. So the elm, the sycamore, and the linden on the northern portion of the site are saved. 65-foot setback on the northern portion from the road, 18 feet on the west, 20 feet on the east. And then we still have some townhomes. All the parking is housed internally. Same ingress for the parking garage is off the alley. And then we've got another ingress egress off of 6th Avenue as well that lines up with the alley directly to the north for the single families. Still got some commercial presence, as we mentioned, but it is still an E configuration that stepped back at the top floor 10 feet as well to minimize the impact of how this building would feel along 6th Street. So these are all repetitive floor plates. You can see the setback here as well as that top floor comes into play. And then here are some mass renderings showcasing what this site looks like. So in the back, we've got Thrive. Thrive's building stands at 82 feet across the entirety of its site. So from 5th to 6th, 82 feet. Crossline is our building on 5th, or I'm sorry, Crossline is 82 feet, Thrive is 74 feet. And then what we're proposing here is the E building on Godman Guild. And this building, again, is just under 60 feet tall. So a nice transition step, saving the trees to the northern portion of the site, and then adding that additional setback that we discussed from the first meeting along the perimeter as well. And then lining up the ingress egress to provide some additional surface parking spots or Uber pickup, whatever it is, to keep traffic off of the streets. So with this plan, we are not in need of a traffic study or a parking study. So we do fall within that range. And then here's some additional views. So this is a corner of 6th and 6th. Here's the 6th looking, here's Thrive's building. Here's the ingress egress with a arch feature into the drive. The security features are the same, so still gated. Security is top priority here. So we want all of our tenants and residents to feel safe and secure. So these cars are restricted parking, gated parking, key fob access to the building as well. Here's a picture of the setback, 65 feet setback, preserving these trees. And then we'll have some additional detailed renderings. This will get a true landscape plan. This is just what we came up with for this presentation, but this will truly be a design landscape feature to focus and kind of screen additional protection. And then here we've got a cut of the road. So these are the Grant Park developments to show you a height and how we compare. And so here is our top of building along 6th. And then here's Crossline, what's being built. You can see Thrive, and then you can see the top of the building, 60 feet is the top building, just under 60 feet. And that would be at its tallest portion, which again, it steps back. So from what you would get from 6th does not feel like 60 feet. It would be 48 feet at its peak. And then it steps back an additional 10 feet. So again, you wouldn't see it. And then we've got some sun studies as well to kind of show the impact of this building. And then here is the list of variances, and we've got Jack Reynolds on here as well to kind of go through what are the variances that we're looking at with this new proposal.
Good evening, folks. Jack Reynolds here. Variance. variances are similar a couple of months ago. Obviously, with the reduction in height, the variance for overall height goes from 35 up to 60, so it's an increase of 25 feet. The building setbacks stay the same, 25 to 0. The use permitted on the first floor is still the council variance to allow the residential use on the first floor. But the major changes obviously are the parking reductions that are requested under the code that is effective on that site because it's zoned institutional. The required parking is 468 parking spaces. We're providing 273. So we're adding the 3,400 square feet of commercial space is calculated as restaurant use, which is 46 spaces. So all in all, we need a reduction of 195 parking spaces on that site. Now, the staff is going to review the request as if it were in the mixed neighborhood use district. And in that classification, we still have the 46 parking spaces that are required for the restaurant use in the 3,400 square feet. But under that scenario, we are calculating the bed use instead of the unit use. So there, we with the residential and the commercial space, there's a total requirement of 310 parking spaces, and we're providing 273. So the reduction there is only 37 parking spaces under the university plan code. And also under the university plan code, there is an FAR requirement, and they allow a 1 FAR. We're requesting a 3.57, so it's an increase of 2.5 FAR increase on that development. So again, reduction in height, reduction in overall parking spaces on both the code required as well as the university plan. So again, we're producing smaller height, smaller density, smaller parking requirements. And I can answer any question anybody may have, but that's our revision in a nutshell.
Thanks, Jack. And so last thing, in terms of materiality, same type of materiality and usage as we had for the Crossline project on Fifth. We do have those ground floor units, so these facades will get pushed and pulled to add some undulations to this building, so it doesn't feel like one monolithic mass. And that's how we have those setbacks as well. So along 6, as we taper into the residential, the building does taper much as it does in the context of these surrounding adjacent developments as well, dropping that height from 82 and 74 respectively down to 60 on our site, and then 48 at its peak alongst the residential portion as well. And then the setback of 65 that's screened on the north by the preservation of the linden, the sycamore, and the elm as well. And so with that, would love to hear some feedback.
Grant, I see that you're asking for a 0-foot setback for the variance.
Mm-hmm.
On what side is that 0-foot setback? Is that on both 5th and 6th, or is that just on 5th? Or clearly you've got 65 feet here on the north side.
Yeah, so we've got 18 feet on the west and 20 feet on the east, and then 65 feet on the north. The 0-foot setback is allowing us to put the arch structure or entry features at the front of on the northern portion of the site.
Great, thanks.
Is there anything else that anyone would like to see before they have questions? I know that there's a lot here to look at in the context. So just let me know where you'd like to scroll.
Would you be willing to share these with us so that we can look at them a little more closely outside of the meeting?
I believe we can do that. That's fine. Yeah, so full transparency again, we appreciate you allowing us to have this meeting and jumping on to have this meeting. We are trying to work towards getting to a UAC zoning meeting in which the application for that submittal would be due 11/29 to hit that 12/6 zoning meeting. So that was the purpose of trying to get everybody on board. We know that there is a strong group of people who really want to see the trees, and they did make a much better project. It did allow, it came at the cost of some units and density, but we got creative and appreciate you guys coming up with some other ideas to help us kind of come up or challenge us to come up with another project that could work on this site. So again, what we've got here is 280 units, starting from that 349 that we proposed the first time around, and now opening up 17% of space, of green space on that northern portion to allow for the preservation of these trees. And then that doesn't include the additional trees that we'll be planting around the perimeter just from the right of way improvements that we have to do with any new development. But really would love to get some support so that we can move forward to the UAC zoning if everybody is on board with this type of programming and use for this site.
So Grant, this is Chip Veets. We're at 1196 North 6th Street.
Yep, I went to school with your daughter. I'm familiar.
Is the photograph I'm looking at right now, is that the frontage on 6th Street? Is that a 65-foot setback?
65 on 6th, yep. And then this is at the corner of 6th and 6th right here. So your house would be further down here. That's cross line that we're building right now. So you're on the other side of this tree median.
All right, so along the street where our house is,
Yep.
that's a 65-foot setback.
No, that's a 20-foot setback with a peak at 48 and then stepping back 10 feet.
All right, so a 25-foot setback, and then the building is now 5 stories tall?
At its peak, but 4 stories where it would be interacting with that street.
Well, 5 stories that block the view from the west.
Yeah, that's correct. 4 stories on the east, 5 stories from the west.
Is a 20-foot setback a variance? Is that normal?
Yes.
That's too small.
And I didn't hear the response. Are these documents going to be shared with or available to us before the next zoning committee meeting?
I think we can happily make that available since we're going to submit for the application. So no issue with it, but obviously would love to get some support. So here's a picture. Here's your house.
Yep.
4 stories, setbacks 10. Then you got the 5th floor. So 20 feet, 18 feet, 65 feet. And then we've got 0 on the alley. And that's part of our improvements. And that's where the main garage access is as well. And then another ingress egress that marries up with this one, with this alley access. And then we have 0 clearance right here for the monument feature. But here are the trees preserved on the north. And then this will get a full landscape plan as well for the UAC zoning meeting. Should we be on board?
Hi, Grant. This is Donna. I'm
Donna,
sick.
how are you? I'm sorry to hear that.
That's why I don't have my picture up there. But anyway, I have 2 comments. Number 1, where's the trash cans going to be? Hopefully not on that 65-foot setback.
No,
It's going to
ma'am.
be inside the garage.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, God bless you. And then the other issue, Laura usually brings this up, is the safety, the vision clearance issues with bicycles and stuff.
Yep.
I I don't know if you thought through that whole thing.
Yep.
And would it make more sense? I don't know this for a fact. I'm just kind of talking to come in on one side and exit the other side instead of having traffic going both ways in both entrances. You see what I'm saying?
Mhm. So the original plan that we had ingress egress off the alley and then another ingress egress shooting off to Fifth.
Mhm.
We've lined that up with the alley now, and both of these garages are secured garages with gate, and then also trash is warehouse inside these garages as well. So all the trash will be here. So Crosslines Trash, the project that's under construction, is also adjacent from this across the alley. So the trucks will all just have all their trash back here. Thrive's project is over here.
Do they have to go inside the garage to get the trash?
So
Or do
they have overhead. Yeah, we have overhead doors that just,
Oh,
so they're
oh,
screened. Yep.
okay.
Mhm. They're enclosed garages, and enclosed trash rooms. And then we do have the vision triangles already taken into account for pedestrian
Mhm.
safety. And then we are working with the city as well. I know we mentioned it, that we were talking about stop sign at the corner of 6 and 6 being very key. That conversation is still ongoing. They've only had 2 reported traffic accidents in there since like 2009. I guess if there are accidents, no one's reporting them to the police, so they don't have record of these accidents.
Mhm.
But we are pushing for a stop sign to go here as well. We also heard the community feedback. We are still maintaining trash pickup or dog doo-doo trash waste bins will be present on the site so that people will have a place to dispose of dog waste properly. There's internal bike storage, there's internal private self-storage as well. I know Michael's got a question.
Yes, thank you. So I'm glad that you had this screen up. I'd like to talk a little bit or listen to you describe a little bit more about those 6 parking spaces that are right there. I know that you say you're going to bring in a full landscape plan. And so the rendering was kind of funky because it did look unfinished, and I understand why it looks that way.
Yep.
I do appreciate that that exit there lines up with the alley to the north of it. That makes sense. But those 6 parking spots seem a little funky, right? And maybe they won't be funky if I can't come up with a more articulate term than that.
I like that word. They definitely do look funky.
So I'm wondering if you could describe for us a little bit, like, did you consider maybe a little bit of a half circle driveway that has parallel parking, like kind of the experience when you pull into Wyland Park, Schoenbaum Family Center, kind of pull in, you've got some parking, you can do Uber Eats, drop off, and then you can exit quickly. I don't know, those 6 parking spots, they feel like the building was built and then those 6 parking spots were an afterthought years later.
Yeah, sure. No, so we will have a full-blown landscape plan. We have engaged with Edge to put that together, but unfortunately they were out for Thanksgiving holiday before we could able to get this done, but he has promised to deliver a full-blown plan for this portion of the site for the UAC zoning meeting. Again, should we have the approval and vote of support to go forward there. But that will be screened. There will be kind of hedges. The idea is to have hedges. These sidewalks will be across to access these. Remember, these are townhomes around here. So there will be a sidewalk that comes across here so that there's a walkway to these front doors of these townhomes. And then there will be a landscape, whether it's some hedges or arborvitae to, screen this parking, but it'll all look very thoughtful and programmed instead of just asphalt plopped in the middle of a green space.
And so just to be clear, those 6 spaces are designed for short-term, somebody kind of running into the building, but not living in the building.
Mm-hmm.
And, how will that be enforced? Because, those 6 spaces would look different if they're empty most of the time and they're just used for this intermittent experience. But yet if people use them as cars are there 24 hours a day, it's going to look funky.
Sure. No, I think I would hate for this to get caught up. So if that's something that people just don't want to see, I'm okay with removing those spaces. It's open. If it was really more of a thought of, hey, here's short-term parking it's going to be a pretty, populous environment. You've got Thrive adjacent. Do you want people just parking in the street, or do you have a guest and the guest wants to run in for an hour? Where can they go? It allowed for the secured garage to function a little bit more soundly without having to say, hey, we've got the short term and throwing people on the street. Now, if you do have an Uber Eats, which is becoming more popular, grocery delivery, all these service providers, there's a spot for them to park.
Yeah, okay. And so just specifically then, did you look at other design options like a half circle driveway that would take up more of that space, but then have parallel parking so it just looks a little more gracious? Or would it not be more gracious? Is this the better alternative?
We haven't looked at too many other options. It's a pretty tight spot considering it's only 65 feet. So just depending on that distance to get a circle around and where that car would park, and then how you're going to be, a circle would cause for more of a concrete more of an asphalt footprint that would need to be worked around rather than just having these pull-in spots. But I mean, either way, we can look at removing them and just having a hardscape program instead of having parking.
I'd be curious if anybody else had a reaction to that or not, because maybe it's just me.
I agree with Michael. I don't like them at all. And I don't think they'll be used for short-term parking. If the person lives way up here on the alley, you think the Uber guy's going to park on 6th Avenue to walk all the way up to 5th Avenue? I don't, you're going to, who's going to enforce all that? That's going to be long-term parking. Nobody's, that's my personal opinion. I kind of agree with Michael. I'd rather see him not there at all.
Okay.
Yeah, I kind of feel, and I'm sorry to jump in there again, but you said that it's a controlled access gate. So I'm just curious, like, if you need this service, and I recognize you do need a service for Uber Eats and all that stuff, but those kind of drivers, they're different people all the time. They may not know those spaces are there, so they'll just stop in the street, even if those spaces are there. But if you needed those kinds of spaces, could you not design it so those folks could pull into the garage and there's kind of a waiting spot right inside the garage where they're able to circulate? I guess that's too complicated, so never mind. I just didn't realize that the parking garage was going to be like gated and controlled access.
Yeah, we're very mindful of security, especially for the residents. So that is just a gate access right here. Again, the parking spaces out front, we don't necessarily need them. They're not hung up on them. We're really more concerned with the building, and if we just thought that was a nice way to program that space, but happy to do.
So Grant, just to make sure we got the whole fam here, this is Krista Dietz, Chip's wife. So my, as I look at this, I mean, it's obvious that you're not going to build single family homes like that exist in the neighborhood in this space. Yep. We got that. Having said that, given that this giant apartment complex is going into a neighborhood, I still think it's too high. 3 stories is plenty. And the setback on 6th Street needs to be retained to 25 feet, which still is close for a building that's large. So those are my comments.
All right, thanks.
May I ask, have you talked to an arborist about what kind of protection would be needed during construction to ensure that those trees that are being saved actually thrive after the construction?
We have, yeah. So we've marked out the drip lines, and what you're seeing here is a crude, roughly marking of the drip line. Right now, we've accommodated for at minimum 15 feet of setback from that drip line for the building additional. So confident in the success of these trees for the future, and they're very tall, so the north is going to be very well screened by these trees.
I think the reason that I asked that is that the arborist who we hired commented that in order for the trees to do well during construction, it would be important to physically barricade them so that no equipment was traveling around adjacent to the drip line.
Yep, perfect. Oh, yeah, done developments with trees all the time, so.
Great.
Not a problem, thanks. Jean, I see you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I just want to make it clear that it appears that you are cutting down the 200-year-old biggest sycamore tree. Is that correct?
We are saving the 3 trees on the northern portion of the site. So there's a sycamore, a linden, and an elm. But there are some smaller fruit trees on the south, as well as a linden and a sycamore that are more internal to the site that are prohibitive to development there. So there will be some trees lost, yes.
So the largest and the oldest tree on the site will be cut down according to this plan.
That is correct.
Grant, I know I've been one of the louder voices in the community arguing for these trees, and like Jean, I lament the loss of that 200-year-old sycamore. I mean, it really is a landmark in the neighborhood. You know, that said, I do want to really recognize all of the evolution this project, has undergone, and all the thinking you've had to do going back to the drawing board. I think this is a much better building than the one we've seen at any previous version. I really appreciate not just having the trees on the north side, but also some green space that's actually really going to be accessible and used and not just tucked into a nook in the building. I still, again, I think I have to process my feelings about the loss of that big tree, but I think my objections are certainly less strenuous than they once were. And again, I just want to really recognize, how hard you've all been working to kind of hear our voices. And so thanks. And again, I don't know if you need a vote from us today, and I don't know if I'm quite there, but I'm feeling a lot better about this than I have about previous iterations.
I really appreciate that. Thank you, Roger. And we definitely took a lot of time. We know that this is a sensitive subject and it is hard to see change, but we think that this is a better plan. I personally was I felt beat up the first time around. I mean, it's not easy to share and then kind of come up and pitch something and obviously just get it not well received, but it all led to a better product. I agree. I think this is a much better design that I know we're proud of, and hopefully the neighborhood can be proud of. Definitely, like this, the height is dropped drastically from where we first were. And again, I know the first conversations led to adding height. I hear you, Mrs. Viets, about the height, but I think the first time around we proposed an even taller building, and that wasn't really hated on yet. And then it was really just kind of figuring out how to maintain that while preserving some trees, and that was even pushed to add more density to the southern portion of the site, which we then pitched an 82-foot building from a 69-foot building, and then dropped the northern building down to 37 feet. Now we've just gone completely out of that path and dropped the whole site down to 60 feet at its peak, and so 48 feet along 6th, and then 65 feet setback from the north portion. So it is just one building now that does prong off. So it is ease as we go up. And then it's not one monolithic face along 6. There are just prongs. So at this top portion, this is an 18-foot deck of the podium. And so there's only 3 spots where this building is at 48 feet that would interact with 6th. And then there's trees along this right of way. And then again, commercial frontage and townhomes, and then 20 feet at its peak.
I would jump in for a moment and say, I echo Roger's happiness at seeing 2 trees saved rather than 0 trees saved. One thing I would point out, though, is that I don't feel it's really fair for you to claim saving the linden, because that's not on your property. So, you know, it's great to say we're saving 2 of the 3 oldest trees, and I can't argue with that, but it's not really fair to say that you're saving the tree that's on the city's right of way.
True. Thank you. Yeah, no, you're right. Any other questions, feedback?
Grant, it's Chip Feats again. I appreciate my colleagues on the Save the Tree thing, and you know, this is a major construction. I'd be a little surprised if they survive it, but that's okay. I'm really concerned that the building is too close and too high to my house, and I appreciate your effort to reduce it, but you know, right now we have a nice view of the sunset and the western skyline, and this thing's just going to completely block it. I can't support it at this height. I could probably live with 3 stories, but this still is a major thing. It's probably 100 feet from my front porch. So just a little feedback. I know you're trying, but that's where we are in this thing. Thanks.
I just wanted to draw your attention to the chat. Rachel has said it's still way too tall and dwarfs the neighborhood.
I actually think you're probably going to hear a lot more of that at the University Area Commission than you even do here. And you know those folks as well as we do. But really, personally, I would just like a little more time to look at these plans. And I understand that you'll be working on them until the 29th. But if there's a way that you'll be sharing them with us at that point, that would be much appreciated.
Yeah, I think we can share them. Obviously, you know, what we're trying to do here is, I mean, it's recorded, so I guess it doesn't really matter, but trying to prevent it from going to media. We really think that this is a conversation to be had between the community and ourselves, as we would love to come up with the best product that you guys can be proud of, instead of, because it is in your backyard. I mean, it's for the community. So we would really like to retain this to the confines of Wineland Park and those who have a stake in this project. But you know, that's just where we stand. I appreciate the time, and we are available all the time. I mean, my contact information has been shared plenty. I know Roger's got it. Laura, you've got it. Anybody else in the neighborhood who's looking to connect, I'm happy to have a meeting, answer calls, have a conversation about what we've got here. And again, we are really looking to get to that December 6th meeting with the UAC zoning. And it might see some additional changes based off of this feedback. So we really just wanted to share what we've got so far, and appreciate the time.
Great. Hey, thank you, Grant.
Thanks,
for the
Grant.
work. Hey, one question, the December 6th meeting, will that be online as well?
It will not. It's the UAC zoning at, it's on High Street.
Okay. Okay, good.
They're always in the Northwood and High Building, first floor public meeting space. Northwood and High Building.
Thank you for their efforts. Hopefully you heard us. Thanks.
All right. Well, again, like I said, if anybody has any additional questions, please feel free to reach out. Happy to share what we've got. And really appreciate the kind words, and definitely the concerns as well. You know, we are really trying to make a product, and hopefully we've showcased through these different iterations what you guys are really looking for, but hopefully heading in the right direction. So thanks a lot. Have a good Thanksgiving.
Thanks, Grant, and thanks to the marker crew.
Happy Thanksgiving. Bye.